Okay, today we're going to do that my Vav on the base. We left off yesterday on the Mishnah over at the bottom. A Mishnah at the bottom of the Vav Amud Aleph. Says the Mishnah. Ketzad mafrishin chala betuma b'yom tov. How do you separate chala, which is tamei, on Yom Tov? What does that mean? It means like this. We have a chiyuv of chala every time we do it nowadays also. It's not the same degree, but we separate challah. If you separate challah, so the din is you have to give the challah to the kohen. Problem over here is, what if challah became tummy? So since the challah became tummy, so the kohen can't eat it the kohen can't eat it because it's tummy. What does he have to do with it? He has to burn it. The kohen has to burn it. The problem is, what if you separate the challah on Pesach and it didn't become chametz yet, but you have to give it to the kohen has to burn it. The problem is, you can't burn something on Yom Tov unless you can't use fire on Yom Tov only for food. Over here, you're not using it to eat it, so you can't burn it. If you can't burn it, you're going to be left over the challah hanging over in the house on Yom Tov. Problem is, if you're going to leave the challah hanging on Yom Tov, it might become chametz. So the challah might become chametz. Ideally, you have to burn it. Over here, you can't burn it because it's Yom Tov. So what am I supposed to do? So says the Mishnah again, how do you separate challah if it's tamei on the Yom Tov of Pesach? Belezer says, the simple solution is, lo tikra lo shem challah ad sheteife. What's the problem? The problem is that it's going to become chametz, so I have an idea for you. Bake the challah, bake the whole dough, and separate challah after you bake it. So now there's no chash that it's going to become chametz because it's baked already. And something just baked isn't no chash will become chametz. You have to burn the challah, so wait till after Yom Tov to burn it. But at least we got rid of the chash of baking the chash of the challah becoming Yom Tov. But Masechta argues and says no. Tatel b'tzeinim. He says no. You can't bake challah and then you can't bake the dough and then take challah from it. The chiyuv of challah has to be before you bake it. So his idea is to separate the dough before you bake it. You have to burn it and you can't burn it on Yom Tov, so it might become chametz. So he has an idea. He says, tatel b'tzeinin, put it in cold water, in freezing water. If you put it in freezing water, then it's not going to become chametz. So there's machlekes to know what he's supposed to do. First opinion says that you have to bake it and then separate challah. And second opinion says you have to separate challah before you bake it and put it in cold water. A third opinion is, the most lenient opinion is, I'm going to be sure. Rabbi says, lo yizehu chametz shemuzarim alav v'balida b'al yamatzah. Challah, there's no problem. Even if the challah becomes chametz, there's still no problem, because this is not the type of chametz Torah said it's also to have in your house. Torah never asked you to have challah in your house if it's chametz. So therefore, we're going to see in a second why. So what are you supposed to do? Mafrisha, do your regular thing. Separate your challah before you bake it. Omanichasa, leave it in your house. Until Yom Tov goes out. And if it becomes chametz, it became chametz. It's fine. There's no problem with the challah becoming chametz. So the first two opinions held that it was a big problem with the challah becoming chametz because you're going to be over on bayinah matzah, and therefore the first two opinions came up with different ideas of how to avoid that. First opinion was to bake the challah first. Second opinion was put in cold water. The third opinion is that there's no problem of the challah becoming chametz, and if there's no problem of the challah becoming chametz, just do your regular procedure and take the challah before you bake it and leave it hanging around the house until Matzah Yom Tov. If it becomes chametz, it becomes chametz. What is as far as machlekes? What are they arguing about? If you're over, I mean the argument, the central argument in the first two opinions and the last opinion. The argument is whether you're over on balira bayimatzah for challah or not. What's as far as to say you're over, you're not over? It says the Gemara lema but teva sanoah can be forgiven. Maybe they're arguing the idea of teva sanoah. There's a certain idea is brought down a lot of times in the Gemara. It's called teva sanoah. Teva sanoah means that a regular person, regarding the presents he has to give to the kohen, what is his ownership? And normally you saw what is his ownership inside these presents. For example, I have some apples. I have to give apples to the kohen. The apples don't belong to me because they're going to belong to the kohen. So who do they belong to? The kohen. The thing is, I have a choice of which kohen to give it to. I have ownership not on the actual item, but I have ownership on the choice which kohen to give it to. Well, that's called Tevas Ano. He has the Ano to choose which coin he could give it to. And eventually this Ano could build up, because if you give it to a regular coin, that coin's going to become your friend, and you might get favors back. So you do have some essential, it's not ownership in the actual item, but it's ownership. You have some sort of shares or stocks inside this truma. So to the challah, you have a choice which coin to give the challah to. So maybe the argument of whether you're over on balira bali matzah on challah is dependent on what is your ownership inside this challah. The Rabbi Lazar says, Tevas hana moment. Rabbi Lazar says the reason why you're going to be over for balina and bali matzah on chametz on challah is because this ownership that you have on challah is counted as money, meaning it's counted as a regular ownership. And if it's counted as a regular ownership, it's as if you own a part of this challah. And if you own a part of this challah, then you're having chametz inside your property. But the Bishur Savar, and the Bishur says that there's no problem of the challah becoming chametz and it's staying in your house. He holds Tevas hana in a moment that the ownership you have over this challah isn't counted as a financial ownership, because it's, at the end of the day, it's not a money ownership. It's not a ownership which is essentially yours. It's only a choice which coin to give it to, and therefore there's no problem of keeping the challah in your house because the challah doesn't belong to you. And the coin's not over either because you didn't give it to a specific coin either. So therefore you can just leave it hanging around your house. So that's what the Gemara thought of explaining the machlekes tanoi. Answers the Gemara, like, you don't say that. You don't explain the machlekes of whether you're over on challah, which is chametz in your house, on whether the ownership is money or not. I can have a different explanation. I could say the kuli alma savar, everyone holds that tevas hana in imamim. Everyone holds that tevas hana, the ownership of which coin to give it to, isn't counted as real ownership, isn't counted as money, and therefore, if it was for that reason, for the ownership over the choice of coin to give it to, I wouldn't be mechayiv you to get rid of the chametz. So what's the machlekes over here? Answers the says the Gemara of hacha b'hoyel kamiftagi. They're arguing over here on the concept of hoyel. We had this concept a few times. There's a certain concept brought down in Gemara a few times, something called hoyel. Hoyel means that if you have a certain situation right now, for example, I have a piece of dough which is now called challah. Even though the dough is called challah, I could say that since I could have done something, or I have a heter to redeem this challah, or redeem whatever it is. So since I'm able to redeem it, so therefore, even if I didn't redeem b'poil, but it's as if I redeemed it, and therefore I'm not able. For example, over here, they're arguing on where we say the if. Yeah, you have a situation of a if. If I would do this, is a option of if counted as if. Does it help me out right now, even though I didn't do it, or does it not help me? So let's see. The Belaza holds that even though the challah, you don't own the challah, but we say, if you want, you could have redeemed the challah. What do you mean redeem the challah? Challah is like a nether. When I take challah and I say this should be challah, so it's like a nether. It's like I'm basically hafrasha. When I be mafresh, it's like now they stuck also. If I have tzedakah and I take coins and I separate them aside and say this should be tzedakah, it's like a nether that I'm going to get tzedakah. We know there's a din that you're able to be matir or nether. So to over here by challah, even though I gave the challah, I took the challah and I separated it, and I'm going to give it to the kohen. So and everyone agrees that challah doesn't belong to me, like we said before. But since if I would go to a rav, and if a last chance circumstance would come up, and I would need this piece of bread, I would be able to go to a rav and be matir my nether that this will be challah, and the rav will be matir, and now this piece will turn into mundane bread. So since I'm able to do that, so mameni, even though I didn't do b'pearl, but since I'm able to do that, it means that it's not something which essentially doesn't belong to me. Because if it was I having the power to make it belong to me, and since I have the power to make it belong to me, I'll be asking a rav to be matir my nether. So it's as if mameni, it's my money, and if it's my money, so therefore you're even balira bali matzah. So that's a concept. Rabbi Elazar says that if, even though right now it's challah, but since if you would go to a rav, you'll be able to matir your nether. So it means that you have the power. There's different ways of explaining how hoyel works. But since you have the power to make this thing in your ownership, it's as if you have ownership of it now, even though you didn't go to the rav yet, and therefore you're able by yabay matzah. So that's why you have to come up with an option, either put in water or take challah after you bake it. Yeshua says that you're not over for challah even if it becomes chametz. He holds we don't say hayil. We don't say the concept of if. If you actually go to the Rav and you're mati in nether and the challah becomes yours, so then your taka be over. But as long as you didn't go to the Rav yet, so then if you didn't go to the Rav yet, it doesn't belong to you yet. You weren't mati in nether. It's still called challah, and therefore right now it doesn't belong to you, and therefore you're not over by Rabbi Matz, and that's the machlekes of Rabbi Shua and Rabbi Lezer. Now that the Gemara went into a case of hayil, speaking about the discussion of hayil, the Gemara brings a few more cases of hayil. Itmar, we learned like this. Someone who cooks on Yom Tov, we just had Pesach now, right? Pesach fell out on Wednesday. Pesach fell out Wednesday, Thursday. So let's say Thursday afternoon, I cook a cholent for Friday. Okay, let's say I bake a cake for Friday. The problem is, I cook in the afternoon, so I'm for sure not cooking for Yom Tov. So it's very recognizable from my cooking that I didn't cook it for Yom Tov. I cooked it for a weekday. It's the next day. What do? Rav Chisda says, Leike, you get malchus. Why do you get malchus? Because you're only able to cook on Yom Tov for Yom Tov. Now that you cooked for Yom Tov on Yom Tov for the next day, you were over on the issue of cooking. It's a regular issue of cooking because there's no heter for Yom Tov, and therefore you get malchus. Rabbi says, in the Leike, you don't get malchus. What's Rabbi's reasoning that you don't get malchus? You cooked on Yom Tov for Chel. Don't you have to cook on Yom Tov? Even nowadays, people think that on Yom Tov you're able to cook, to cook everything. No, it's a heter that you're able to cook Echon Abash for Yom Tov. You can't cook for after Yom Tov. So if you make Erev Tavshin, cook for Shabbos, that's a different story. But cooking from Yom Tov to Chel is according to Rav Chisda, and even according to Rabbi, we're going to see in a second, is a Malacha D'Oraisa. So what's the argument whether you get Malchus? And everyone agrees it's also the question if you get Malchus. Rav Chisda said you get Malchus. Like, why do you get Malchus? We don't say that if you invite the whole neighborhood, then they'll be able to use the challah. Meaning, let's say I cook a whole bunch of cakes on an hour before, around Shkia time, or 5 minutes before Shkia on Yom Tov. So it's very recognizable. I'm not cooking for Yom Tov. I'm cooking for after Yom Tov. So the only heter for me to use these cakes, or that my malacha would be mutter on Yom Tov, is if I eat all these cakes on Yom Tov. How can I eat all these cakes on Yom Tov? I can't eat them myself. So if I invite the whole neighborhood and to eat from my cakes, so then it'll be magala that my cooking was a kosher cooking, because my cooking was actually for Yom Tov. So Rav Chisda says, if you invite the whole neighborhood and you let them eat your cakes, so then you don't get malchus, because your malacha wasn't a malacha. But if you don't invite the whole neighborhood, so then what's the reason to be mati your cakes? Your cakes are aser, you get malchus, and therefore, your cakes are aser, you cooked on Yom Tov for a weekday, and therefore you get malchus. Rabbi says no, you don't get malchus, even though it's aser, but you don't get malchus. Why? Because I'm not hayil. We say the concept of hayil. We say even though you didn't invite all your guests, but since you have the power, in your power you have right now to invite all your whole neighborhood to eat the cakes on Yom Tov. And since you have the power to invite your whole neighbor to eat the cakes on Yom Tov, so the malacha isn't essentially aser. The malacha has a way of being mutter, and therefore I can't give you malchus for it. Amrei Rabba Rav Chisda, Rabba told Rav Chisda, Rabba asking, according to you, Rav Chisda says you get malchus, ledidach da amninon hayil, according to you, that we don't say the concept of hayil, heach eifin Yom Tov l'Shabbos. How do we cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos? Right, we just spoke about now cooking from Yom Tov to the next day. Rabba says the cooking on Yom Tov the next day could be permissible because I say, I will invite all the guests. But according to you, how do you cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos? Right, Shabbos you're also not able to prepare on Yom Tov for Shabbos for the next day. You're going to cook on Yom Tov for Yom Tov. So the only way Rabba says I could see that I cooking for Yom Tov, cooking from Yom Tov to Shabbos is if I say the concept of hayil. If I say that since I'll be able to invite all the neighbors, I'll invite all my neighbors to eat the food on Yom Tov. Even though I didn't do it b'payil, but I'm able to do it, so therefore that's a heter to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos. So Amar Lei, so Rav Chisda answered him, what are you talking about? I don't need the concept of hayil. We make mishum erev tavshin. That's what we do now. There's ask any child in cheder, how can you cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos? Because we make erev tavshin. We don't have to come to the concept of hayil. We make erev tavshin, and erev tavshin matters is cooking for Yom Tov to Shabbos. Rabbi asked back, "Mishum erev tafshilin sharina nisur der." I saw you're telling me for erev tafshilin, you're able to matter isur der. I saw cooking a yamtiv. If it's not for yamtiv, it's isur der. I saw. So you tell me you make a small erev tafshilin because you're preparing a small a matzah and a filter fish. That's going to be matzah you a mlacha der. I saw. Okay, we have to see exactly how Rabbi learned the idea of erev tafshilin and how it helps. But Rabbi also agrees it's the musik of erev tafshilin. But he's asking, according to you, if it's only because of erev tafshilin, you tell him only because of erev tafshilin, you matzah malacha der. I saw. Amalei, so Christ answered him, no. Midiraisa tzarchei Shabbos nasim b'yamtiv. Midiraisa, you're able to cook from yamtiv to Shabbos. Meaning Midiraisa, Torah allowed you to cook on yamtiv to eat, also for Shabbos, to cook also for Shabbos. V'Rabbanon hu the gazir bei. The reason why you can't cook from yamtiv to Shabbos is because Rabbanon were gezer that a gzera you can't cook from yamtiv to Shabbos unless you make erev tafshin. Why would they make such a gzera? Because maybe they're going to say, you're able to cook from Yom Tov even to a weekday. Cooking from Yom Tov to a weekday is awesome, right? You can't cook for Yom Tov a weekday. Cooking for Yom Tov to Shabbos, then you're able to cook Minei Rice. Okay, we bring down. Rashi brings down that Yom Tov is also called Shabbos. Since Yom Tov is also called Shabbos, the Gemara brings down that you're able to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos. But cooking from Yom Tov to weekday is a Yisr. Chachamim said that you can't cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos because we're scared that maybe you're going to cook from Yom Tov to Chel, and therefore they said that you can't cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos. So now they had to matir the kibon that's rechor abanon, eruv tafshin isle kera. And since Abanon made the eruv tafshin, now there's a hacker. Now no one's going to come to cook from Yom Tov to Chel because the only reason why you can cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos is because we have eruv tafshin. Meaning people would think, everyone would know that cooking from Yom Tov to Shabbos is aser unless you have erev tafshin, which is a hacker, and therefore no one would come to cook from Yom Tov to Chel. So that's how we have another idea of Hoyle. Another question Rabbi asked of Chisda on the idea of Hoyle. Esvei Rabbi asked of Chisda from this brayso. It says in the brayso behema musukanes. You have a behemoth, if you have an animal that's very sick and it's about to die, and the owners are scared that it's going to die. If it dies, it's going to become an avela, and if it becomes an avela, it's a waste of money. So what does he want to do? He wants to shecht it in order to save the meat. At least he's going to have the meat. The problem is he doesn't want to eat the meat on Yom Tov. He doesn't need the meat on Yom Tov. Let's say he already ate his Suda Shabbos, his Suda Yom Tov. So he's going to Yom Tov afternoon. He sees his cow's about to die. He wants to shecht the cow to save the cow from being sold to given to a goy. He wants to have the meat himself. So what's the din? Can you shech the Yom Tov? Another din is lo yishchit. You cannot shech the cow on Yom Tov. Ella, the only heter he's able to shech the cow on Yom Tov is if he's going to be able to eat a kazayis while it's day, meaning before Yom Tov goes out. Meaning even if there's not enough time to take off the skin and roast it, even if it takes a lot of time. So even if there's enough time on Yom Tov for him to skin the cow and salt it and do whatever he has to do and roast a small piece of the meat, even if it's only kazayis on Yom Tov, then he's able to shech the whole cow. Says the Brayso further, Yachel lechel afagav delay boy lemechal. Do you think from the Brayso's mashma that it's mutter to shech behema Yachel lechel afagav delay boy lemechal? The Brayso says if he's able to eat it's a kazayis of tzli, then it's fine. Meaning, it doesn't say he has to eat it. If he's able to eat a kazayis of tzli, then he's able to shech the whole cow. So it makes sense according to me, because we said the idea of hoil. What does it mean hoil? So on Yom Tov, you don't have to eat the pearl. You don't have to actually skin the cow and eat it. Since you're able to skin the cow and eat the hoil, since he's able to eat the cow, so he's able to shecht it. And therefore, because we say that concept of hoil, Rabbi says, according to me, we mentioned before that Rabbi says the idea of hoil, and that's why on Yom Tov you could cook. On Yom Tov, if you cooked, then it's fine. You cooked for the weekday, it's fine because you can invite all the neighbors. So over here, the Brayso says that you're able to shech the cow. If you wanted, you could have, you could have a bit of the cow on Yom Tov. You doesn't have to do it with pearl. But according to you, Rav Chisda, who said we don't say the idea of hoil, why should you shech the cow? if you shech the cow, then there's no need for this cow in Yom Tov. Since there's no need for this cow in Yom Tov, especially if he doesn't skin it, so then why can you shech the cow? Amar later, if Chisda told him, the reason you're able to shech the cow is because he's going to lose a lot of money. Since he's going to lose a lot of money, so they allowed him to shech the cow. So Rabbi asked away, because if someone's going to lose money, we asked they will matter is the rice of shechting a Yom Tov. Amar lei, so if Chisda answered in, we are matter is the rice of the shechting Yom Tov because he's going to lose a lot of money. Because he's going to lose money, so he already made the achlata, the owner of the cow, if he knows that he's going to lose his whole cow, if he's going to lose his whole cow if he doesn't eat a kazayis, so he's going to, in his heart, he's going to make achlata lachar kazayis, to eat a kazayis. And we have the kazayis basa, and it doesn't make sense, and it's not possible to have a kazayis if you don't shech the whole cow. So the idea is that if you're going to eat a kazayis of meat of this cow, it's going to be mutter the rice of the shech the cow. So Rabbi learned that he doesn't have to actually eat what for. He's gonna skin a whole cow to eat a small kazayis. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't mean he has to eat a kazayis, but it means that since he's able to eat a kazayis, he has to have enough time to be able to eat a kazayis. If Chisda says no, that if he knows that if he doesn't eat a kazayis of meat, this whole cow is going to be lost, so he's going to do whatever he can to eat the kazayis of meat. And the only way to eat a kazayis of meat is if you shech the whole cow. So therefore, he's able to shech the whole cow without coming onto the concept of hayt. Okay, we're going to stop over here at the bottom of Memvav Amud Beis. Tomorrow we'll do Memvav Mitzvah. Have a good night.